sometimes your plants will just die, and that doesn't make you a bad gardener. Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is Auxhart Gardening. So today I want to talk to you about this topic that I don't always see addressed, which is the fact that there are many reasons that a plant could die, and not all of them are your fault as the gardener. And you might not even know all the time what went wrong with your plants. And while there's always a reason that your plant has died, sometimes that reason is not figure outable, right? Sometimes you don't have the experience, or you just don't have the information to be able to figure out what went wrong with your plants. And I'm here to tell you that just because a plant dies doesn't make you a bad gardener. So recently I've been talking about transplanting my tomatoes, and a few weeks ago I had transplanted 2 trays of tomatoes, and then I went off to Florida for 10 days, and I had somebody checking in on them, but to be fair, the fact that most of them died is not fully unexpected. They kind of look like they just dried up, didn't get watered enough, and I was able to accept that. So when I got back, I had some other seedlings that still needed transplanting, and I went ahead and transplanted them. I watched them every day, made sure they got enough water, and sure enough, within a couple of days, they started looking like this. And I don't have a good explanation for that. I would say about 60% of my tomatoes have died. Some of them survived, you can see. But they don't look great. You know, I've got this one that's kind of barely hanging on. And this is coming off of telling you guys while I was transplanting those, tomatoes are extremely forgiving. And it's really easy to transplant tomatoes because they bounce back so quickly. They can grow new roots all along their stems, and they're basically really hard to kill. And then I come in here and I manage to kill 60% of my tomato transplants. So what I had done is the same exact thing that I did last year that worked out really, really well for me, is I started my seeds indoors, and then I transplanted them out into these little cups, and then brought them outside into this plastic greenhouse. And at that point last year, all of my seedlings started looking really, really good. And so this year, I did the same exact thing, hoping to get the same good results. And as you can see, pretty much everything except the tomatoes took this really well. The basil especially is just doing amazingly well. My peppers are doing great. And this method seems to be like a legitimate method. My plants look really healthy. And last year, of course, it worked as well. So I'm left wondering, what went wrong, you know? And I'm wondering, was I negligent? Oh, you hear Draco mewing for Kata? Oh, they're adorable. So yeah, I was wondering if it was my fault as the gardener. I was searching my head, what did I do that could have possibly killed all of these tomatoes? And the answer is, I don't know. And that's okay. It was not okay to me at first, but I think it has to be okay, because you can't always figure out what exactly killed your plants. And maybe it's not always your fault. Let me give you guys another example. So I have this set of seedlings. These are some spinach and some kale, and these I started in January. And it is April. And these sprouted, they looked great, and then they never really got any bigger. They were planted in potting soil, which should have had plenty of nutrients for them, and they just never grew. And I can't explain that either. Last year I had amazing success with kale, mild success with spinach, and I tried a new variety of kale this time, but I also planted a variety that I've tried before, and both of them stayed small like this. And you know, it's just one of those things where if you look at that and think, I'm a failure as a gardener, I have a black thumb, I'm killing everything I touch, then you're not going to have very much fun gardening, and you're not ever going to become a better gardener because you've now convinced yourself that you can't garden. And if you look up and look around, you'll probably see that that's not true. For example, I have all of these seedlings in here. They're looking great. I have this garden here. It's looking pretty great. I have that garden back there where the garlic and the onions are doing better than I ever could have imagined. And I will be the first to admit that I am still learning as a gardener. Like, for sure, there are about a bajillion things I don't know about gardening. I know some, and I'm willing to learn, and I'm willing to look at these mistakes as just mistakes and not reflections on who I am as a gardener and what I'm capable of. And I desperately want to encourage you to do the same, because I have seen so many people who really honestly believe that they can't grow anything after having one or two plants die on them. And I don't ever want anybody to feel that way. I think that there's a real lack of education when it comes to gardening. A lot of people don't grow up knowing how to grow plants. And just because nobody taught you doesn't mean you can't learn, doesn't mean you'll never be good at it. So if you have a passion for gardening, if you really want to be the type of person who grows stuff, and you've got it in your head that because you've killed a few plants and you don't know what happened, that you can't grow food, then I want to challenge you on that. I think you can grow food, and I really want you to try. So, motivational speech aside, I do have a couple of theories about what happened to these poor little tomatoes. The first one is that they were double cupped. So this cup has a hole in the bottom, and then they had another cup underneath that did not have a hole. And this is supposed to be a way of helping them retain moisture, kind of the way that you would in bottom water trays. And I was looking at them the other day, and I noticed that when I separated the cups to look at how much water was in there was a lot of water, and it did not smell very good. So it's very possible that they just got root rot and were basically overwatered, right? And my second theory is that perhaps I got insanely lucky last year by moving seedlings from inside transplanting straight to outside in a greenhouse without hardening off. And while that worked great last year, it could have been a fluke, because hardening off is really important for your plants, especially when you're taking them from a very controlled environment into the great outdoors. And maybe last year that worked for me because it was a controlled environment indoors, and then the greenhouse was a semi-controlled environment. But you know, it's one of those things where it's hard to know for sure what happened, and I'll never find the data that says, yes, this is what happened to your plants. All you can do is try again, make some changes, and see what happens. And so that's the main lesson for you today, is sometimes you will know for sure. And again, you're not a bad gardener. You, like me, you just need a little more experience, and you need more time to try things and see what works and what doesn't work. So go forth, new gardeners, and focus on your successes rather than your failures. Thanks so much for coming to my motivational speech today. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time, but until then, happy gardening.